There used to be a long list of lines or limits that governed how the Middle East operated in terms of what various countries, including Israel, could and could not do without risking serious upheaval and regional, if not broader, conflict. And Israel has blown past all of those lines without even stopping to consider the ramifications, one after the other, for more than close to 2 years now. Another one happened earlier this morning U.S. time, when 10 Israeli jets were dispatched over Qatar, a close American ally, to drop bombs on its capital, Doha, where a senior team of Hamas negotiators are based. And they're based there because both Israel and the United States requested that Qatar let them be there in order to negotiate with the United States and other parties whenever the United States needed to negotiate with Hamas. Israel attempted to kill the senior leadership in Qatar, despite the fact that they are in the middle of what were supposed to be negotiations to bring the hostages back, remember them, and to try and end the war. Here from the New York Times, Israeli strike targets Hamas leadership in Qatar, a Gaza war mediator. Hamas said that Israel had failed to kill senior officials in the group without specifying whether they had sustained injuries. In a statement, the group confirmed that the son of Khalil al-Hayya, Hamas's chief negotiator, his office manager, and 3 other people affiliated with Hamas had been killed in the attack. Now, these 3 other people affiliated with Hamas were basically security guards. So they killed an office manager, the son of someone, and 3 just people who work in security in the building. Incredible precision and efficacy. The New York Times goes on, the strike also killed a member of Qatar's internal security forces and injured a number of civilians, the country's interior minister said. Wouldn't be an Israeli strike if you didn't kill or injure a bunch of civilians. And they actually killed a member of Qatar's security forces, a Qatari who works for the Qatari government. A Qatari foreign minister spokesman, Majid al-Ansari, said the country had not received a U.S. warning ahead of the strike. Quote, the statements being circulated about Qatar being informed of the attack in advance are baseless, he said. There was a call from a U.S. official. It came during the sound of explosions caused by the Israeli attack in Doha. And Trump himself and the Trump White House confirmed what the Qatari official said, that Trump, when he was notified in advance, ordered the White House to notify the Qataris, but by the time the U.S. notified Qatar, the bombs were already falling. Quote, this criminal assault constitutes a blatant violation of all international laws and norms and poses a serious threat to the security and safety of Qataris and residents in Qatar, he said. Other countries in the region that are close American allies, the beacons of democracy in Saudi Arabia and in the United Arab Emirates, as well as the U.S. ally in NATO, Turkey, those governments all vehemently condemned what the Israelis did, warning serious reprisals if it ever happens again. But it's an open question whether or not they actually knew and consented, although I have nothing definitive on that. Originally, I thought it was unlikely this could have happened without at least notifying the UAE and Saudis in advance. But the more facts emerge, the more evidence emerges, the less likely it seems that the Saudis and Emiratis actually knew. And obviously, having Israel bomb one of those Persian Gulf dictatorships is necessarily going to create a precedent that in the minds of the Saudis and Emiratis, among others, is quite dangerous for them. So Israel alienated at least 3 close American allies at once. And the Trump White House is trying to cast an appearance that not only was it not involved in the strike, but also that it didn't really even know about the strike until very, very shortly before it was executed. And both the Trump White House and Trump himself are trying to imply, if not outright state, that they're angry about what the Israelis did. Again, take that with a huge grain of salt for reasons we'll explain in a second. Here's the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt when asked about this. This is what she said earlier this afternoon.
This morning, the Trump administration was notified by the United States military that as Israel was attacking Hamas, which very unfortunately was located in a section of Doha, the capital of Qatar. Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals.
All right, now that is a pretty strong statement in many different ways. It has become this sort of reflexive claim on the part of the pro-Israel wing, the neocon pro-Israel wing of the Trump movement, that Qatar is the root of all evil. Israel supporters even have the audacity to try and claim that, oh, don't worry, it's not Israeli money or pro-Israel money that's flooding American politics and American discourse. No, it's actually the problem is Qatar. And I've always said, oh, so it's Qatari money that dominates our politics, not Israeli money? Let me know when the U.S. starts transferring billions and billions of dollars every year to Qatar, if that's the case. And let me know when every single week the Congress passes a new law or enacts a new resolution defending the Qatari government. Let me know when the Trump administration starts expelling and deporting American students because they speak critically of Qatar and its government. The idea that it's Qatar that has massive influence in the United States rather than Israel is so laughable. And yet Barry Weiss's Free Press, which will soon be part of CBS for exactly this reason, that they are essentially a arm of the Israeli government, like AIPAC, has run articles trying to pretend that no, the foreign influence that you ought to worry about is not Israel. No, we barely do anything. It's Qatar. But it is interesting that Qatar has become this boogeyman among pro-Israel Trump supporters, or just Israel supporters generally. In fact, if you criticize Israel, they use the liberal tactic where liberals spend 8 years accusing anybody who said anything positive about Trump or questioning the war in Ukraine. They'll say, oh, you're a paid agent of Russia. You're just saying what the Kremlin tells you to say. Immediately, if you criticize Israel or question the U.S.-Israeli relationship, you'll have all sorts of people who support Israel coming and saying, you're a whore for Qatar. You're a Qatari agent. Qatar pays you. Laura Loomer tried to claim that the reason Tucker Carlson was criticizing Israel is because he was being paid by Qatar. It turned out to be a complete fabrication. She had found a document where there were payments made from the government of Qatar to a PR agency trying to get interviews with the Qatari leader and other Qatari officials. And they tried to get him interviews with many different shows, including Tucker Carlson's show, but there was no money transferred from Qatar to Tucker Carlson. And the idea that Tucker Carlson needs money or that he would change his views in order to get some is, I mean, it's not even worth commenting on. But also I would point out that Tucker Carlson had an extremely lucrative and very profitable, in all senses of the word, position in conservative media. He was unanimously beloved by all conservatives until he began criticizing Israel. If anything, that has probably harmed his career and harmed his standing more than anything else ever has. At least in the past decade, you now constantly hear criticism of Tucker Carlson among conservatives, whereas previously you never would have heard any. But that's what they always do. They're like, oh, you're on the paid payroll of Qatar, you serve Qatar, just like the liberals said that about anybody who criticized them, that you're on the payroll of the Kremlin. It's the same stupid tactic. But it is notable that Donald Trump considers Qatar to be a very important and close ally of the United States. Caroline Leavitt just said that. She said Israel bombed a sovereign country that is a close and important ally of the United States. When Trump went on his little Persian Gulf tour to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and to Qatar, he heaped praise on the Qataris. The U.S. is a gigantic military base. If you've ever been to Doha or go to Doha, it's one of the first things you'll notice. There's a sprawling military base, utterly fortified. That was the base that the Iranians shot a few fake missiles at in coordination with the United States, just for Iran to show they had retaliated against the United States for the United States bombing their territory. and they were all intercepted. But there's this gigantic, important military base, the largest the U.S. has in that region. It's based in Qatar. And U.S. generals and military officials have an extremely close working relationship with the Qataris in Doha. And they are important to Trump. They are important to the Trump administration and the U.S. government, which is why it's so bizarre to hear Trump supporters, the pro-Israel types, trying to make it seem as though Qatar is the root of all evil or they're the source of terrorism, whereas Trump constantly praises Qatar and did so again here, saying this is a sovereign country, a close ally of the United States that has been working very hard with the United States, risking a great deal to try and facilitate a diplomatic resolution to return the hostages and end the war. Qatar is the basis of that. Qatar has been serving as the mediator between all the sides. And yet again, as the deal was close, or Hamas had agreed to a deal that the United States was presenting, Netanyahu comes in and makes it impossible for there to be a deal by trying to kill the Hamas negotiators in Qatar. And so Caroline Leavitt is saying a lot of different things there. She's saying this is a sovereign nation. It was an unfortunate attack. It was on a U.S. ally. And it does not serve, she said, American or Israeli interests. That's a pretty negative note of condemnation. Again, we'll get to whether or not it's sincere in any way. But that is the statement that she made. Here's the rest of it.
Peace does not advance Israel or America's goals. However, eliminating Hamas, who have profited off the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal. President Trump immediately directed Special Envoy Witkoff to inform the Qataris of the impending attack, which he did. The president views Qatar as a strong ally and friend of the United States and feels very badly about the location of this attack. President Trump wants all of the hostages in Gaza and the bodies of the dead released, and this war to end now. President Trump also spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu after the attack. The Prime Minister told President Trump that he wants to make peace, and quickly. President Trump believes this unfortunate incident could serve as an opportunity for peace. The president also spoke to the Emir and Prime Minister of Qatar and thanked them for their support and friendship to our country. He assured them that such a thing will not happen again on their soil.
Now, I don't think I've ever heard the U.S. government speak so positively and openly about their love of Qatar, the importance of Qatar to the United States, as Caroline Leavitt just did in this statement. I mean, she was saying, look, Qatar is a sovereign country. President Trump regards it as a bad thing that they were attacked. He spoke to Netanyahu after it happened, and he promised the Qatari Prime Minister and the Emir that it will never happen again on their soil. So clearly the White House is trying to leave the impression, at least, that the United States is very unhappy with what it is that Israel did. Here is Trump's own statement on Truth Social, which was similar to what the White House press secretary's statement was. He said this, quote, "This morning, the Trump administration was notified by the United States military that Israel was attacking Hamas, which very unfortunately was located in a section of Doha, the capital of Qatar." It's very strange wording. He didn't say the Trump administration was notified by Israel. He said the Trump administration was notified by the United States military that Israel was attacking Hamas in Doha. And you could read that as saying we weren't told by Israel at all. The United States military detected these planes moving there. There's some reporting that the Trump administration found out shortly before the attack was implemented or during it. And that was why when Trump says he immediately told Steve Witkoff to notify the Qataris, by then it was too late. He goes on, "This was a decision made by Prime Minister Netanyahu. It was not a decision made by me. Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals. This is basically the same. However, eliminating Hamas, who have profited off the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal. I immediately directed Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to inform the Qataris of the impending attack, which he did. However, unfortunately, it was too late to stop the attack. So he's really saying, had we had time, had we known about this with more time in advance, either we or the Qataris or the United States and Qatar jointly would have acted to stop the attack. Qatar has air defenses, the United States air defenses. Those are what we use to shoot down the missiles that Iran sent, that Qatar and the United States knew was coming. But Trump clearly is trying to say there that had we known about it with more time in advance, we would have stopped it. Quote, I view Qatar as a strong ally and friend of the U.S. and feel very badly about the location of the attack. I want all of the hostages and bodies of the dead released and this war to end now. Trump wants the war to end now? I think Trump wants the war to end now as long as it's on terms that no one in Gaza will agree to. Namely that not only all the hostages are returned, but that Hamas surrenders, lets Israel take over Gaza. There's no more Hamas there. They lay down their arms. He goes on, quote, I also spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu after the attack. The Prime Minister told me that he wants to make peace. I believe this unfortunate incident could serve as an opportunity for peace. I also spoke to the Emir and Prime Minister of Qatar and thanked them for their support and friendship to our country. I assured them that such a thing will not happen again on their soil. I have directed Secretary of State Marco Rubio to finalize the defense cooperation agreement with Qatar. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So there is no doubt that Trump is trying to leave the impression that this was done without the United States' participation or even knowledge, that they regard it as an unfortunate mistake, something that does not advance the United States and Israel's interest or goals, and that the United States is going to move closer to Qatar as a result of this, promising it'll never happen again, Israel will never bomb Qatar again, and that this defense agreement that the United States and Qatar are working towards, and effectively already have, will be strengthened and formalized. Here's what Trump said when he met with the Emir of Qatar, when he visited Qatar on that Persian Gulf trip in May of this year.
Well, I have to say that we've been friends for a long time. Hard to believe, right? I remember that first meeting very well. And we've liked each other and we've worked with each other. And now we can work in the highest capacity. And we'll bring peace not only here, but I know you're very much involved in helping us in other regions, like what's happening with Russia, Ukraine, etc. And I think we're having some pretty good news coming out of there today and maybe tomorrow and maybe Friday, frankly. But we'll see about that. But I just want to thank you for everything, and maybe in particular our friendship. It's been a very loyal, great, beautiful friendship. And the job you've done is second to none. You look at this, it's so beautiful. As a construction person, I'm seeing perfect marble. This is what they call perfecto. And just a great job you've done, and what a beautiful place. And we appreciate those camels. I haven't seen camels like that in a long time. And that was some greeting. We appreciate it very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So that's Trump's view of Qatar, that he says publicly and privately, while his supporters say exactly the opposite, the pro-Israel ones, that Qatar is the cause of all the problems, that anyone who criticizes Israel is on the Qatari payroll. I mean, the cognitive dissonance is bizarre. They'll never, ever, ever say that about Trump. Oh, he's controlled by the Qataris, even though every chance he gets, Trump lavishes Qatar with praise and says what a great friend and ally they are. One of the things that happened during the Biden administration was that a reporter, an Israeli reporter named Barak Ravid, who works for Axios, who somehow became the most influential reporter on the U.S.-Israel relationship and on Israel and Gaza since October 7th. Like overnight, he just appeared. He's not only an Israeli, he was in the IDF reserves until 2023. He worked in the notorious surveillance unit of the IDF, Unit 8200. And this is who Americans have been turning to, at least the ones who consume corporate media, to learn about what the reality is about Israel. An Israeli, not even an Israeli American, an Israeli citizen who was in the IDF until about 6 seconds ago. And the way that he reports is the worst possible way of doing journalism, if you can even call it that, but it's a common practice in corporate media, which is he goes to government officials. He would go to Israeli officials and Biden officials and now to Trump officials, and they whisper to him what they want him to say. And then he goes and says it unquestioningly, mindlessly. And so one of the things the Biden administration would constantly do was tell Barack Ravid, oh, we're so angry, we're infuriated, the president is enraged by what Israel did. And you would see all these headlines, you know, every 6 weeks, Biden said to be enraged by Netanyahu. And yet the U.S. never used any of its leverage, namely that it was funding and arming the war, ever once to demonstrate this rage. It was just the Biden administration wanted the people to believe that Biden was enraged by Israel. And so they would whisper to Barack Ravid, Biden's enraged. And then Barack Ravid would dutifully go and have a headline saying, Biden enraged by Israel, officials say. And he would do the same thing with Israel. The Israeli officials would whisper things to him that they wanted Americans to believe, and he would go and, like a good stenographer. Stenographers, for people who don't know, are people who sit in court and they have this little stenography machine, and their job is just to write down what everybody says. And that's what the worst reporters are, stenographers to people in power. That's what Barack Ravid is. And for that work, he got the highest award, I don't know what it is, like the best reporter of the year award or whatever from the White House press corps, because they think that's what good reporting is, that you write down what powerful people in government say and then just print it without any investigation or verification or confirmation or questioning. Just serve as the spokesman for the Israeli and American governments. That's what Barack Ravid is good for. That's what he does. And so every 6 weeks in Axios or whatever, you would see Biden enraged, Biden angry. And now the Trump administration is using this Israeli and former IDF soldier for that as well. Here is Axios today. Israel's attack in Qatar infuriated Trump advisors, officials say. Quote, the news stunned the White House and infuriated some of Trump's advisors because it came as the U.S. was waiting for Hamas to respond to President Trump's new proposal for peace in Gaza. In fact, the Hamas officials were meeting to discuss that proposal. The White House expected to receive Hamas's response by the end of the week. Once President Trump was briefed on the imminent strike, he instructed White House envoy Steve Witkoff to notify the Qataris. A U.S. official said by the time Witkoff reached them, gosh, just a little late. The bombs had already hit their target. On Monday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's top advisor, Ron Dermer, met in Miami with Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. So just to be clear, this meeting was the Israeli top advisor to Netanyahu, Ron Dermer, Steve Witkoff, who is a longtime supporter of Israel, and Jared Kushner, also a very long-time supporter of Israel. This is the brain trust between the United States and Israel. Wow, they must have been enraged. They sent Jared Kushner to meet Ron Dermer. The article goes on, quote, although Dermer was in the know, he didn't say anything about the plans to strike Qatar, according to a source with direct knowledge. Oh, this is a meeting right before. And they didn't tell Jared Kushner about it. On Tuesday, Trump called Netanyahu, expressed concern about the attack, and stressed the need to move toward peace in the region, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said. She added that Netanyahu responded that he wants peace and that he thinks the attack could help achieve it. Now, one of the reasons to be extremely skeptical about the claims from the Trump administration, we didn't know, we're angry about it, is because this is the ruse that they constantly pulled with Iran. The Trump administration was constantly leaking, the Israelis were constantly leaking, that there was this big rift between Trump and Netanyahu. They were constantly fighting, and they were particularly fighting over the fact that the Israelis wanted to bomb Iran, and Trump was vehemently opposed to this. And Trump kept saying, no, what we want are negotiations. We're negotiating. We're going to resolve this diplomatically with Iran. And then suddenly, the Israelis go and bomb the U.S. At first, the U.S. says, we had nothing to do with that. Then, of course, it turns out the U.S. had everything to do with that. And these negotiations, this leaking, we want to negotiate with Iran. We're going to reach a diplomatic resolution with Iran. Trump and Netanyahu are at loggerheads over bombing Iran. Trump won't let Netanyahu do it. This is all a ruse to lure the Iranians into a sense of comfort that there was no attack possible, there was no attack pending. And the reason there are Hamas negotiators in Qatar is because, as I said, the United States government insisted that Qatar let Hamas negotiators stay because the Obama administration, every administration since, has used Qatar as the mediator to negotiate with Hamas when they've needed to about a whole variety of topics. They're not there because Qatar is harboring terrorists. They're there because the Israelis and the Americans want them to be there. And so now you have a situation where, again, Israel attacks. Trump says, oh, I had nothing to do with that. In fact, I'm kind of angry about it. And yet the reason these Hamas negotiators were meeting in that building that the Israelis bombed was because the Trump administration was sending them peace deals and saying, oh, we want you to meet and discuss whether or not you're going to accept these. So it's very possible this is the same ruse that they use with Iran. Trump and Israel are at loggerheads. They don't want the Qataris to think Trump approved this. But they were negotiating with Hamas. As Trump said, we were hoping to get this done so that they would meet and give the Israelis a target. Here's what Trump said on September 7th. So this was on Sunday. Everyone wants the hostages home. Everyone wants this war to end. The Israelis have accepted my terms. It is time for Hamas to accept as well. I have warned Hamas about the consequences of not accepting. This is my last warning. There will not be another one. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So he was threatening Hamas, but at the same time encouraging Hamas to meet and negotiate and give an answer. Here from CNN yesterday, this was a story about how these people that Israel tried to kill were in Doha to negotiate. The headline was, Qatar presses Hamas to, quote, respond positively to U.S. ceasefire proposal, officials said. Qatar's prime minister pressed Hamas to, quote, respond positively to the new U.S. ceasefire proposal in a meeting in Doha, according to an official familiar with the meeting. Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jassim Al Thani met with Khalil Al-Hayya, Hamas's chief negotiator, on Monday to discuss the deal. By the way, Khalil Al-Hayya, who is Hamas's chief negotiator, he negotiates a deal with the Israelis and the Americans and the Turks and the Qataris and others to try and get a deal done. That's what they tried to kill today. And according to reports, they only managed to kill his son. Hamas confirmed late Sunday that it had received the proposal from the United States that included, quote, some ideas toward reaching a comprehensive ceasefire. Israel said it was giving serious consideration to the proposal. So they lured Hamas into these buildings to negotiate, the U.S. did. And that was when Israel went and attacked. In case you still think that Israel cares in the slightest about getting these hostages back or wants a deal of any kind. They just went and tried to murder the negotiators with whom they were negotiating. Just like they did in Iran, by the way. The first thing the Israelis did was murder the lead negotiators that Trump was negotiating with and claiming he was making progress with and getting close to a deal that would avert a war. Here's the Times of Israel, a pretty right-wing Israeli newspaper, earlier today. Israel informed the U.S. of Qatar strike only when the jets were in the air. Trump gave order to tell Qatari. So this is the Israeli press aligned with the Trump administration's version of events. Doesn't make it true at all. But this is the Israeli media reporting the same thing. Quote, Israel informed the U.S. of its intention to strike Hamas leaders in Qatar when the jets were already in the air, Channel 12 reports. Quoting several U.S. officials, the report says that the U.S., which is a large military base in Qatar, identified Israeli jets heading toward the east and demanded an explanation from Israel. Israel informed the U.S. that it was carrying out an attack on Hamas leaders in Qatar. The information was sent to Trump, who gave an order to inform Qatar. However, the report says the information was sent when the missiles were already in the air. So there you see just one added detail. And this is all coming from Trump officials, so the fact that it's aligned with the Trump administration version doesn't tell us much. The whole article and report is based on what Trump administration officials are claiming. But that's as I noted in the Trump statement, there was and in Caroline Leavitt's statement as well, the wording was very strange there. It was essentially saying, we were notified by the U.S. military that Israel was going to Qatar to bomb locations there. And that's what I suggested sounds like what they're saying is Israel didn't even tell the United States. It was the U.S. military picked up on radar or whatever tracking system they have, Israeli planes heading to Qatar, told the White House, And the White House called up Israel and said, what's going on? And then Israel said, oh, but by the way, we're bombing Qatar. That's the version that the U.S. wants everyone to believe, that they had nothing to do with the strike. Maybe it's true. It's the same exact thing that Trump did when Israel bombed Iran. That first night, Marco Rubio issued a statement saying, oh, this is totally unilateral by the Israelis. We have absolutely nothing to do with it. And only once the world got impressed, because Israel had done this precision striking, killing scientists and the like, that Trump wanted credit. And he said, yeah, of course we knew about it. This was our plan, and it worked well. Here is Sheikh Mohammed bin Jassim Al Thani, the Qatari leader, the foreign minister, who gave a very similar version of events about how he was notified.
Ruse from Al Jazeera English. Sir, has there been any communication between Qatar and the U.S. prior to the attacks, or has there been any warning from the United States conveyed to Qatari officials? Or, based on your information, has there been any involvement of the United States, whether with the approval or with the knowledge?
We had a very, first of all, the first part of your question, I have just answered it. The attack happened at 3:46. The first call we had from an American official was at 3:56, which is 10 minutes after the attack. And after that, President Trump has spoken with His Highness the Emir. He condemned the attack, and the U.S. government position that they have no knowledge about the attack nor any coordination about it until it started to happen. Now, when they got the alert, when the alert has reached us, that's an information that I don't know right now. What I know that the official channels that we have with the U.S. Got the U.S. after the attack by 10 minutes.
So the Qataris knew only after the bombs were dropped. Great notification. Trump is saying, we did it immediately. I told Witkoff to tell them, but we just have found out. And unfortunately, the news got to the Qataris only after the bombs were dropped. Now, my former Intercept colleague, Jeremy Scahill, has a lot of sources in Hamas, particularly in Qatar, but also in Gaza. And yesterday, Jeremy was reporting on this deal that Trump sent to Hamas, that he was saying you need to accept this, or unless you're going to have dire consequences. And Jeremy was suggesting that this was a ludicrous proposal in the sense that it seemed fake. It was 100 words long, and that adds to the possibility that this was all a ruse to get Hamas negotiators together to make a nice juicy target for the Israelis to be able to kill them. Exclusive, the 100-word ceasefire proposal Trump sent Hamas. Quote, Hamas struck a diplomatic tone in acknowledging receipt of the U.S. concept on Sunday. Hamas officials have told drop sites they recognize that the only way to end Israel's genocidal war is through a formal agreement is if Trump effectively orders Netanyahu to make a deal. Quote, Hamas welcomes any initiative that helps in the efforts to stop the aggression against our people. We affirm our immediate readiness to sit at the negotiating table to discuss the release of all prisoners in exchange for a clear declaration to end the war, the full withdrawal from Gaza, and the formation of a committee to manage Gaza from Palestinian independence, who will immediately begin their work, the Hamas statement said. And here's the text of the 100-word agreement Jeremy obtained. The main proposal, quote, all hostages, alive and dead, will be released within 48 hours of signing. Number two, numbers consistent with previous releases. Palestinian prisoners sentenced to life and detainees from Gaza will be released within 48 hours. Three, a ceasefire will go into effect upon implementation for a period of 60 days or until negotiations are concluded. President Trump will guarantee that the parties negotiated in good faith until an agreement is reached. Four, the issues to be negotiated include the definition of Hamas, the definition of disarmament, the formation of a new government, the withdrawal of Israeli forces upon the formation of the government or upon successful conclusion of negotiations, and amnesty for Hamas members. 5, open flow of aid into Gaza upon implementation of the agreement. which is odd because Israel supporters constantly say they're not blocking aid entering Gaza. But Trump's saying, hey, look, if you get a deal with the Israelis, then they'll let aid in. They'll let aid flow into Gaza, which obviously means, by inference, that they're currently blocking aid from entering, which has been well documented in multiple ways. So that's the deal that Trump sent. It would mean Hamas gives up all their leverage in what they call their prisoners, what the Americans and Israelis call their hostages. It would rely on the Israelis releasing all the, what Hamas and others call hostages, what the Israeli call prisoners, even though they've never been charged or convicted. And you would then begin a process of trying to agree to a government, and only then would the ceasefire remain permanent if some agreement were reached. Other examples like that, where Hamas gave up hostages back in exchange for a ceasefire that they were told would be permanent, Netanyahu immediately said, we're going to go back to bombing them, obviously. So whether Hamas is willing to trust the Americans, trust the Israelis, I don't know. But clearly they were being urged to meet in Doha and to go over this proposal at the time the Israelis tried to kill the negotiators. Here from the Israeli outlet Kippa, this was on September 7th. The title was Amit Siegel's Revelation, The New Deal is Not What You Think. Amit Siegel revealed that the proposal presented as American for the release of hostages was in fact born in Jerusalem. According to him, Trump merely repackaged it and presented it as part of his policy. Quote, this is not an American proposal, but an Israeli one, wrapped nicely in cellophane and given the title Made in the USA, he wrote. So basically, the Israelis said, here's what you should give to Hamas to create the illusion of negotiation. And Trump said, okay. And then Trump said, hey, here's our proposal. We'll see if Israel agrees, but you guys should get together and meet and see if you do. Now, again, this is exactly what happened in Iran. Here from ABC News, June 22nd, which was 2 days before, or rather, the title was Trump said he was giving Iran a window to come to the table. He struck 2 days later. So they were constantly saying, Trump was, that we're getting very close to a deal. And he believed that there was going to be progress. There'd be no need for a war. And then that was when the Israelis struck. I don't think it's controversial for me to note that most people drink coffee just to wake up. But what if your coffee could actually fight aging from the inside out? Rejuvenate coffee isn't just caffeine in a cup. No, it's not. It's premium Arabic coffee infused with AKG, a compound naturally found in your body that plays a key role in energy production, cellular repair, and longevity. Scientists have studied it for its ability to keep your cells powered and support healthier aging. That means you're not just getting clean, crash-free energy, you're giving your body the fuel it needs at the deepest levels. More focus, better mornings, long-term benefits without changing a single habit, other than the coffee you already drink every day. So if you're going to start your day with coffee, make it one that's weaponized against aging. Go to 1775coffee.com/code and order Rejuvenate Coffee today. Fuel your body, protect your future, rejuvenate. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.